Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're coming at you with the midweek update in the world of cannabis. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it as it really helps out my channel. And then, of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos. Then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the industry, identify top companies that you keep seeing pop up, and take advantage whenever you're ready. But we're going to jump into it with this Bloomberg article that I was very happy to find this morning, that cannabis compounds prevented COVID infection in laboratory studies. While past studies that I've referenced have mentioned possibilities like this, whether it's reducing inflammation or helping regulate the immune system, the more definitive data that we can get on the therapeutic potential of cannabis and the more that we can get this awareness out there is ultimately good for the plant, good for us investors, and good for the odds of getting it descheduled sooner than later. But so for more information, cannabis compounds prevented the virus that causes COVID-19 from penetrating healthy human cells according to a laboratory study published in the Journal of Nature Products. The two compounds commonly found in hemp, called cannabigerolic acid or CBGA and cannabidiolic acid or CBDA, were identified during a chemical screening effort as having potential to combat coronavirus, researchers from Oregon State University said. In the study, they bound to spike proteins found on the virus and blocked a step the pathogen used to infect people. The researchers tested the compound's effect against alpha and beta variants of the virus in a laboratory. The study didn't involve giving the supplements to people or comparing infection rates in those who use the compounds to those who don't. While hemp is a source of fiber, food, and animal feed, and this would be referring to hemp, the non-psychoactive plant used for industrial purposes, as opposed to medical cannabis, which is high in THC, which is psychoactive and more for medicinal, and extracts are commonly added to cosmetics, body lotions, dietary supplements, and food. But the big takeaway is that these compounds can be taken orally and have a long history of safe use in humans, said Richard Van Bremen, a researcher with Oregon State University Global Hemp Innovative Center. They have the potential to prevent as well as treat infection by SARS-CoV-2, he said in a statement, which is a big deal. Why we just need to deschedule so we can research more of the specifics and potentially use this as an alternative treatment. And so this is the study that it references, mainly highlighting the specific compounds from hemp as opposed to high-grade THC cannabis, and orally bioavailable and with a long history of safe human use, these cannabinoids isolated or in hemp extracts have the potential to prevent as well as treat. And so all we can hope for is that this gets taken seriously and that researchers look more into this, but all we can really ask for is more awareness as Forbes and Bloomberg are sharing these findings. The study finds cannabis compounds prevent infection by COVID-19 virus. So obviously this is a big deal. And does it change much, from yesterday to today? Not really, because at the end of the day, I still think we just need the US government to admit and acknowledge that cannabis does have therapeutic benefits and help legitimize it by descheduling it themselves. But we're getting closer, as Sammy J says it best. If only the US government would get its head out of its ass and unleash the research potential of cannabinoids instead of classifying it as a Schedule I substance with no currently accepted medical use when there's already 36 states with legal, medical, and an FDA-approved drug. And on top of that, the irony, thank you Club for sharing this one, is that the US government holds a patent for cannabis as an antioxidant and a neuroprotectant. Yet it's a Schedule I due to the fact that it has no medical benefits or value. Seems pretty hypocritical to me, especially when we can see the date of this patent being October 7th, 2003. So they've known for a very long time cannabis is a safe medical alternative to the opioids that they've been pushing on the American public for the last 2 decades. And the longer time goes on, we are getting to a tipping point where the government is going to have to acknowledge the medical benefits. And so hopefully we'll get there sooner than later. On to this one from BDSA, top 5 US cannabis brands of 2021, looking at sales out of Arizona, California, Colorado, Illinois, Massachusetts, Maryland, Michigan, Missouri, I believe, Nevada, Oregon, and Pennsylvania. And so the top 5 winners are listed right there, but we're going to talk a little bit more about them in a moment, but just wanted to highlight the whys behind the top cannabis brands. You can pause to read as to why inhalables are dominating, why vape share is rising gradually, and why border crossing is very important, as the longer it takes for certain states to change their laws, the more sales that will be driven into these existing states. And so the first one, Rhythm, the leading brand of Green Thumb Industries. Rhythm continues to hold, I think this is meant to be first place, and has been the best-selling brand in MA through 2021, offering a product portfolio of flower, 45% of brand sales, vape 50%, and concentrate products 5%. Rhythm sales reached around $430 million for the first 11 months of 2021 in MA, Illinois, Illinois, Pennsylvania, and Nevada. Number 2, Cresco has generated $425 million in sales from January to November 2021 across Arizona, California, Illinois, Massachusetts, Maryland, and PA, and holds second place in BDSA's top 5 brand list for 2021. The company's offerings include vapes, 40% of brand sales, flower 40%, pre-rolls 1%, and dabbables at 20%. While Stizzy has expanded rapidly, becoming the best-selling vape brand across all BDSA tracked markets and holding onto the 3rd ranked spot in January to November 2021 sales. Also the number 1 brand in California, Stizzy generated $250 million in sales year-to-date 2021 across Arizona, California, Michigan, and Nevada. While number 4, Curaleaf subsidiary Select is one of the biggest players in the cannabis vape market with products available across 17 states, while the brand has seen $250 million in sales for January to November 2021 across Arizona, California, Colorado, Illinois, Massachusetts, Maryland, Michigan, PA, and Oregon. While lastly, a storied edible brand, Wild, out of the Oregon market, Wild's success across the U.S. cannabis industry has allowed it to crack into the list of the top 5 brands from 2021. The brand brought in $190 million in sales across Arizona, California, Colorado, Michigan, Nevada, and Oregon for January to November of 2021. And what we can see is introducing BDSA's 2021 best-selling cannabis brands by state. Arizona, we saw Timeless Vapes, Illinois, Cresco Cannabis, Nevada, Cookies, Pennsylvania, Cresco Cannabis, California, Stizzy, Massachusetts, Rhythm, Oregon, Wild, Colorado, Wana Edibles, Maryland, Curio Wellness, and Missouri, Illicit Gardens. So lots of room for growth, but great to see which brands are doing well versus the ones that are losing market share. On to some other stories from new cannabis ventures, as Michigan cannabis sales end 2021 with a very strong December. And this is what we wanted to see, especially because Illinois followed the same trend. We did see reducing sales from October to November, but then we saw a big bounce back in December. And so with one more day in November, Michigan sales increased 10% to $168 million in December, up 66% from a year ago. The Michigan Cannabis Regulatory Agency breaks out sales by medical and adult use, with medical sales falling 17% from a year ago to $32.9 million, up 3% sequentially, and adult use sales increasing 119 to a record $135 million, up 12% sequentially. And so this is just another way of looking at that visual, seeing the adult use and the medical sales. And while there's a bit more information here just based on product type and breakdown if you wanted to check it out, main thing I like to jump down to is to find out how much the entire year increased versus last year. Michigan generated $985 million in cannabis sales in 2020, and the program should continue to expand ahead as supply becomes more available and as distribution expands. In 2021, year-to-date sales combined were up 82% to $1.79 billion, up from $985 million last year. So that is a big jump. That is what we love to see again out of these new states that are accelerating the growth and supplying the demand properly. While this one from New Cannabis Ventures is a bit older, from January 6th, but this highlights November sales for most of the markets that we're going to go through. Cannabis sales stagnated in November according to BDSA data, but that's also in line with what we were expecting. And while we saw Illinois and Michigan both see a big jump in sales in December, I anticipate that while we see a bit of stagnation in November, we're going to see, likely from a lot of these states too, a big jump into December to end the year, as most people do pick up their spending during the holidays. So looking at Western markets, BDSA provides coverage for Arizona, California, Colorado, Nevada, and Oregon. In November, growth ranged from -11 in Nevada to 27% in Arizona compared to a year ago. And so Arizona transitioned to adult use in late January last year, but this is the 8th month that BDSA has included adult use sales, with total cannabis sales growing 27% to $109.4 million, with adult use representing $56.9 million, and medical cannabis sales fell 39% from a year ago to $52.5 million. So nonetheless, great to see a very strong first year out of Arizona, as December is most likely primed to see an increase of sales from the last few months, but also just wanted to use this time to reference an article that I shared a few weeks back from Tucson.com saying that Arizona was going to surpass $2 billion in sales. And I just want to apologize, because looking at this, obviously that's just impossible. They're not going to reach that. And so that was a misleading article. I apologize that I missed that and that I should have caught on, but Arizona would have to be doing just under 200 million in sales a month in order to even reach that. And so while 1.2 billion is still great, it's certainly not 2 billion. And so just my apologies for sharing that, as it was not necessarily an accurate article. On to California, sales fell 4% sequentially to 289.2 million compared to a year ago. The rate of decline improved from -11.4 in September and -6.4 in October to -3.8 in November. But nonetheless, this is one of the more mature markets in the US. So good to see at least steady sales and hopefully primed for another strong strong December. We'll just have to wait and see for that. While out of Colorado, the most mature market in the country, the annual decline improved from 13.9% in September and 9.6% in October to 1.7% in November, as sales fell 4.9% sequentially to 173.7 million. But nonetheless, still very strong sales out of a state which has 5.7 million people. And we will have to wait and see whether December, like last year, shows a strong jump up from November, but seems like it's primed to do so as well. On to Nevada. Nevada continues to struggle as the pandemic lingers because travel is not as appealing to most as others. Sales fell 10.5% to 66.4 million, down 9.2% from October. So as we can see that once things get back to normal, that will definitely help sales in Nevada as tourism resumes. While in Oregon, this is one of the stronger markets in October, with 4 consecutive year-over-year declines shifting to a gain of 1.7%, but November sales fell 4.4% from a year ago and 14.2% sequentially to 86 million. But if we take a look at December last year, this was another, big sort of blowout, or not blowout, but a big jump back up from November. And so hopefully we will see the same thing, and I can relay that information next month. On to the Eastern markets. Florida sales fell 4.9% sequentially to 142.8 million, while Pennsylvania fell 2.5% from October to 102 million. While Michigan, I already covered that, so not going to bother jumping into that. Illinois, we've already covered this one as well, and actually for December, but just a quick recap. Combined adult use sales and medical sales fell 1.9% in November to 152.3 million, up 43.8% compared to a year ago, but we did know that, yes, suggested a surge to record sales of 173 million in December. On to Maryland, the market accelerated its growth for the second month, with annual growth picking up to 7.6% as sales fell 4.3% sequentially to 43.8 million. But keep in mind, this is a medical-only market, not a legal market, but I imagine if we take a look at last year's trend, we did see a big jump from November into December, and we will likely see the same thing as well. I imagine next month. Massachusetts, the last state on this list, the 46% growth in November was up from 42% in October and 40% in September, as sales fell 5.4% sequentially to 140.9 million. But if we take a look at last year, big jump from November to December, we'll likely see the same thing this year. So great to highlight that while they did stagnate for the month, there's still strong sales across the board and priming for a strong December. As we've seen from past trends, we'll likely be able to see the same thing out of these states. On to this, as Arkansas registers a total of 264.9 million worth of medical cannabis sales in 2021. So just to relay, medical cannabis dispensaries in Arkansas sold a total of that amount worth in 2021, according to data released by the state's Department of Finance and Administration. These sales figures reflected sales of 40,000 pounds of medical cannabis by just 37 dispensaries. Imagine if they, opened 5 times that to properly supply the demand. By contrast, Arkansas 2020 sales totaled 175 million with 26,000 pounds sold. So a nice increase, especially considering they probably didn't increase the amount of dispensaries too much. The Relief Center in Bentonville was the state's top-selling dispensary for 2021 with 4,000 pounds of medical cannabis sold, and the state has 79,476 active medical cannabis patient cards, the DFA noted. So again, while this is a state that have legalized for medical, and I'm sure they're seeing the benefits, they're not necessarily aggressively expanding as other states probably are. Hopefully they will, consider doing that as they see the tax revenue that's being brought in. But good news out of Arkansas. While out of marijuana moment, top German government official previews cannabis legalization plan details. So while we got this, wanted to share a bit of information. These are the basics. The government wants adults to be able to possess and purchase cannabis from licensed facilities. Those could be pharmacies, but lawmakers may also continue to draw the circle to expand where cannabis could be purchased. Because there will be a sales component, Federal Justice Minister Marco Buschmann told the German press agency that there also must be producers who are allowed to grow and sell it legally, signaling that the coalition is developing a license structure for different aspects of the market. And according to a news report, legislative leaders are also looking into staffing policies for dispensaries. So in order to sell cannabis to for adult use, there could be some required expertise of the sales staff so that they can provide information about the products and to counteract risky cannabis abuse, especially in the case of recognizable addicts. And so cannabis will also be subject to some form of taxation like other consumer products, the minister said. He also rejected the idea that most people will continue to operate in the illicit market due to the fact that it isn't subject to taxes. The minister said that the risk of criminal prosecution should also be included in the dealer's price calculation on the street. And while that's his view, it might be a bit naive compared to what we've seen in other markets, but I think ultimately what's going to deter the illegal market is going to be low taxes that will allow legal operators to actually build sustainable businesses over time. But when it comes to timing for legalization plans rollout, Buschmann said that it is primarily up to the Ministry of Health, which is currently preoccupied with fighting the pandemic. And as it stands, personal possession of cannabis is decriminalized in Germany, and there is a medical cannabis program in place. So good news out of Germany, but again, no timeline for when this is going to be put in place, likely 2023. Speaking of Germany, though, on to TLRY as they report profitable second quarter fiscal year 2022 financial results. And while I do like to do a deep dive when the US MSOs release their earnings, it's mostly because their comprehensive income statements are clear enough and understandable for me to translate, especially because I don't have the background in finance. However, with TLRY's, it's just a bit of a mess, and I don't know what I'm looking at a lot of the time. So for that reason, I'm not going to do a deep dive, but I'm going to just point out some things that I noticed. And regardless, it's just worth noting that while they're not fundamentally as solid as many of the US MSOs, they're still ahead of many of the LPs in Canada, and I think that's why the market did react well on Monday to these earnings. But just to highlight, net revenue increased 20% to $155 million from the prior year quarter. So that's 20% growth to $155 million year over year, with net income improved $95 million to $6 million, so from a negative 80-something million from the prior year quarter. So again, year over year, not quarter over quarter. And so just a few things to note. The company also announced a new parent name, TLRY Brands Inc., reflecting the company's evolution from a Canadian LP to a global consumer packaged goods company powerhouse with the market-leading portfolio of cannabis and lifestyle CPG brands. And ultimately, I'm not necessarily invested for the Canadian market. I want the German market that will come on in 2023, medical and adult use in time. And so that's why I remain invested in TLRY. But there's a lot of snippets in here. If you want to look at the financial highlights, you can pause to read. Some strategic growth actions, you can pause to read as well. Growth and high potential across key markets, you can pause to read this if you want to take a look. Leading cannabis market share in Canada, we don't know how long that's going to be for. But main thing that I wanted to highlight is how much money are they actually making from Germany in their operations. So we just take a look, we can see that this year compared to last year, 155 million sales, up from 129, but cost of goods went up to 122 from 94 million, gross profit of 32.7, down actually from 35.2. So they lost some profit there. Again, doesn't look great, but where can we actually see the breakdown? And we see revenue from Canadian medical cannabis, 7.9 million, 11% revenue from adult use, 49 million, 67% revenue from wholesale cannabis products, 2.2 million, 3%, and revenue from international cannabis products, and this is where I would see most of Germany, 13.7%, with 19% of their sales. So while this is all they really share from out of Germany, they do make this claim at the top here that they have the leading medical cannabis company in Europe with 20% market share in Germany. So if that is true, there's obviously a lot of room for growth, especially with a population of 80 million when they do legalize for adult use at some point. So that's the main reason why I still continue to hold them. But last one, just to make one more quarter over quarter comparison, because it's quite funny. 3 months ended November 20th. This last quarter, they brought in 155 million in revenue. Last quarter ended August 31st. They did 168 million in revenue. So the revenue is actually going down quarter over quarter. That's why they didn't want to show that. And that's why it's not so great. Obviously, the APHA side of the asset is picking up a lot of the TLRY side of the asset. But I guess over time, this will help them hopefully be that market share leader in Germany. So just wanted to share this one from Betting Bruiser. As again, I'm getting this from him, and he seems to have a lot more experience with financial statements and accounting than I do. So just wanted to share this. Why TLRY posted positive net income, also known as financial wizardry. And so if we take a look, the company recognized a change in fair value of its APHA 24 convertible debentures of 56.4 million. And then the change is driven primarily by the changes in the company's share price and the change in the trading price of the convertible debentures. And so I really don't understand how this works, but I'm just taking this from someone else. So maybe don't take this as truth, but if you understand a little bit more, you might get a kick out of this. And this is how they actually posted a profitable quarter of positive net income versus negative, as we've seen in the past. So additionally, for the 3 and 6 months ended November 30th, 2021, company recognized a change in fair value of its warrants, resulting in a gain of 20.2 million and 37.7 million acquired as part of the arrangement, also as a result of the decrease in the share price. And so from my understanding, if the share price goes down, then it's possible the change in fair value will go up. And so whatever that means, according to Betting Bruiser, is the trickery that allowed them to post a positive net income of 6 million, despite the fact that revenue decreased 17% quarter over quarter. So just want to use this to highlight that as new investors, all we can do is try to make time to do as much research and learn as much as we can to help us make better investments. And this is, again, why doing your due diligence before you invest is so important, to help give you as much of an understanding as you can to allow you to actually hold through difficult times if you face them, keep averaging down, and make money in the long run. So on to some news from MSOs. Is Trulieve first in Florida market to offer live diamonds, company's latest hydrocarbon extraction product. Now, I don't know what live diamonds are, but clearly there's a demand for them. So we're going to find out. Today, they announced the launch of live diamonds by Mths. Live diamonds are the latest innovation from Trulieve's state-of-the-art hydrocarbon extraction lab, the only one of its kind in the state of Florida. And the initial product release of 500 units sold out within 24 hours, and Trulieve anticipates another batch of live diamonds to become available for sale in February 2022. The launch launch strain Whitefire Alien exhibits subtle natural flavors with a retail price of $45 for 0.5 of a gram. So good on them for finding different holes in the market that they can expose with new products. Onto this one from Record Online is cannabis maker submits plan for Warwarsing product site with up to 679 workers. And so the Warwarsing Planning Board has scheduled a January 8 public hearing on plans to build a 380,000 square foot building where cannabis would be grown, turned into various cannabis products, and stored for wholesale distribution. The developer is Cresco Labs, a Chicago-based company that makes and sells cannabis in 10 states. So the document submitted to the town, Cresco forecasts the facility ultimately could employ as many as 679 people. That is even higher than the 300 to 400 potential jobs that Ulster County and local officials celebrated when they announced Cresco's interest in the Schrade site at a press conference. Another prime example of why ending cannabis prohibition is beneficial to the citizens of your state, especially those that live in rural areas that need jobs and opportunity the most. Onto this one from NorthJersey.com, as New Jersey cannabis dispensaries want to sell legal cannabis. So what's the holdup? Now, New Jersey medical cannabis operators are chomping at the bit for the Cannabis Regulatory Commission to give them the all clear to flip the switch and begin selling cannabis to anyone 21 and older, not just registered patients with a medical cannabis card. Now, there are 4 alternative treatment centers. The state's term for vertically integrated medical cannabis operation from seed to sale have already submitted conversion applications to the CRC, the first step towards winning state approval to begin selling cannabis recreationally. While officials and experts have long said that the medical cannabis dispensaries will be able to sell to recreational patients far earlier than any recreational-only dispensary would open in New Jersey, giving Tier 1 MSOs already in New Jersey a massive head start over any social equity entrepreneurs. Now, under the state law, that first day for adult use sales at licensed dispensaries is supposed to come next month. The Enabling Cannabis Legalization legislation, signed into law by Governor Phil Murphy last year, directs the CRC to begin adult-use cannabis sales before February 22nd, with 30-day notice beginning January 23rd. But there's a catch. The CRC is yet to issue any licenses for recreational cannabis sales, so even if sales are approved as of February 22nd, there won't be any dispensary selling it. What's the holdup? If this was any private industry or private organization, they'd be fired and replaced by competent people that can get the job done on time. So I don't understand. When receiving a conversion application, the CRC will take into account factors like the actual capacity for growing and selling cannabis, such as the square footage of cultivation space and the capacity of dispensaries to handle huge crowds while ensuring lines aren't too long. But after a conversion is approved, the operator will then have to prove they've complied with whatever conditions the CRC requires. Only then will a final inspection occur. And all conversion applications will be voted on publicly at CRC meetings, but until that happens, medical cannabis operators have been left spinning their wheels. So no wonder so few people want to get into brick and mortar business anymore, especially when state regulators work at such a slow pace. It looks like a nightmare. But there is hope at the end of the tunnel that the CRC, or there's light at the end of the tunnel, that the CRC is getting closer to giving medical cannabis operators like Curaleaf the green light. So in the last 2 months, the Commission has issued dozens of new awards for medical cannabis dispensaries and cultivation centers, each of which is required to remain medical only for at least 1 year after they open. So when considering whether to approve a conversion application, Brown said the overall market supply plays a vital role in the process. More medical cannabis growers and dispensaries means more options for patients, which means it's easier to approve one of them switching to recreational sales. And if Curaleaf's application is approved, the company will be ready no matter what start date is given. If they want us to sell tomorrow, we could sell tomorrow. So again, highlighting that regardless of what they say, it seems the state regulators want to give the tier 1s as much of a benefit as possible. So good news out of New Jersey, but hopefully we'll hear some sort of news approaching that January 23rd deadline, that there will be some sort of announcement as to whether they're going to actually launch this on February 22nd or there's going to be more delays. On to this one from MJ Biz Daily. While other than that, several states in play to legalize cannabis this year through legislation. So just wanted to jump down to see what states they are. As I've sort of mentioned similar articles to this in past videos, but legalization via legislatures in 2022. Several states are on track to legalize recreational or medical cannabis this year through legislative action. For medical, we've got Mississippi expected to legalize, strong chance of legalization South Carolina and North Carolina for medical, and then worth watching for medical is Kansas. And then on the recreational flip side, strong chance of legalization Rhode Island, and then worth watching Minnesota, Maryland, Ohio, New Hampshire, Delaware, Pennsylvania, and Hawaii. So lots of potential for 2022, but they do offer a lot more details for state specifics if you wanted to grab the link below and check that out. Well, I've got another study here wanted to reference out of Australia that says women are using cannabis to ease endometriosis. According to a study, almost 3/4 of Australian women with endometriosis surveyed in a new study are illicitly using cannabis to ease pain symptoms, despite potentially being able to access legal medicinal cannabis through a doctor. Researchers at Western Sydney University surveyed women with endometriosis in New Zealand and Australia, where 72% of respondents reported self-administering cannabis illicitly. The women self-reported positive outcomes in using cannabis to manage the often painful condition, in which tissue similar to that fat which lines the uterus grows beyond it and causing inflammation and scarring. It is estimated that 1 in 9 Australian women have endometriosis, but just 23% of the 18 Australian respondents accessed cannabis through a doctor's prescription, while medical cannabis was approved for use in Australia in 2016. So it seems as if it's either too expensive or there's a stigma around still using it. So the establishment would be wise in looking into these factors, trying to reduce costs, make it easier for women to access cannabis legally, and help reduce the double standards. Any implementation would help bring people into the legal market from the illegal one. Well, this one comes from Marijuana Moment, as top federal intelligence official loosens cannabis restrictions for workers and addresses cannabis stocks. And this is unbelievable to me, especially just when you consider the double standard that people have faced all along. Just wanted to find the snippet. Interestingly, unlike in a past DNI memo on the topic that was signed by then DNI James Clapper in 2014, this new document also talks about cannabis-related investments. So can you imagine? It says that eligibility for access to classified information or to hold a sensitive position may be impacted negatively should that individual knowingly and directly invest in stocks or business ventures that specifically pertain to cannabis growers and retailers while the cultivation and distribution of cannabis remains illegal under federal law. Can you believe that horseshit? Imagine being discriminated against and shamed for knowing the truth about cannabis and choosing to invest in America's fastest growing industry to better your and your family's future. It's unbelievable, especially the double standard that top federal officials can, project outwards when we know that Congress is busy, taking advantage of insider knowledge and making fortunes throughout the entire year, which should be 100% illegal too. But then to come in here and say that anyone that chooses to invest and better themselves financially, because obviously these companies are going to be behemoths in the future, that you're not going to be qualified for a good job that's going to get you connections and a pension and take care of you. Yeah, screw that. I'd rather be financially free in time than be a cog in your system. So just wanted to share this from Unusual Whales, as this is what we see coming out of Congress that are supposed to be working in your best interest, not their own. A lot of them beat the SPY. Now, a lot of them did also not beat the SPY, but still, this should be totally illegal. Last few things, though. This one is from Toby Cannabis, released by popular demand, his chat with Curaleaf Executive Chairman Boris Jordan from last week's Twitter Spaces, and it is now available on YouTube here, so I recommend you grab the link and check it out, especially if you're invested in U.S. cannabis. Otherwise, you're just doing yourself a disservice, because this is one of the few leaders that we have in this industry that helped build it up from nothing in 2014 to a $25 billion industry last year, and he's a self-made billionaire with 30 years of experience, so he gives it to us straight, offers his most up-to-date perspective, and highlights why 2022 is likely going to be the year we thought 2021 was. And so check that out. And lastly, just wanted to give a big shout out to Ed Perlmutter, who's, after much thought and consideration, decided not to run for re-election. It's been a privilege and honor of a lifetime to serve Colorado, a state that I love and will always call home. And so big thank you to Ed Perlmutter for all the effort and work that you've done into bringing awareness to the Safe Banking Act, because likely in your last year, we have the best chance of passing it than ever before. And I know you're going to fight for it. And since you're not up for re-election, I hope you're going to do whatever it takes to get this bill passed. But that is it for today's episode, folks. So I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, please leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you on Sunday for This Week in Cannabis News. Have a great week, everybody.